about Bonnie a little bit?
Let's hear about Bonnie a little bit.
Okay, let's hear about Bonnie. Good. Here we go.
We're not asleep yet.
No? All right. I didn't hear any snoring yet. All right. So this would be Off We Go Into the Wild Blue Yonder. And it would be page 56. I don't remember the exact day that I met Bonnie George, but I remember that when I met her, she became my best friend. I can still remember how she sounded when she quietly laughed and her dainty nose wrinkled up, or when she talked about how she didn't want to be a chow runner. So a chow runner in basic military training would have to run down from the dorm and go stand in line and wait until she was told, okay, your group of people can come down and eat. So, and she was tiny, so she hated this. So, all right. The chow runner had to stand in front of the snake pit. So just imagine a long table and you have military training instructors, so TIs are sitting behind it, and they're just practically growling at you. Yes. So they would stand in front of the snake pit until the TI said it was their flight's turn to eat, and they would have to sprint back to retrieve the flight. Nobody wanted to be the chow runner. Now that I think about it, they probably purposely chose the most reserved of the recruits to make them more resilient. I believe Bonnie was only chow runner for a portion of the time, and another recruit, appearing to be timid, was chosen when they felt their work was done with Bonnie. They have a thing about breaking you down so that they can build you back up. So at the time, you just think they're picking on you and it doesn't make sense, but afterwards it does. Bonnie was a small framed girl with shoulder length, perfectly straight, medium brown hair. Her hair didn't do the ridiculous outward flip like mine did at that length. It would flip out this way and flip this way, never together. I didn't even know how to use a straightener if I had one to fix that. She was shorter than me and probably stood 5'1". So she was your height, Mom. And she couldn't have weighed more than 80 pounds. Bonnie said she was from Montana. I want to say Butte because I laughed when she said it. Remember, I was 19 because I said it sounded like butt. And sadly, that's about all I can remember that she told me at the time. I remember talking about our families, and from the sounds of hers, she had a great one. She was very soft-spoken, but she was just as tough as the biggest girl in our flight. Our TI, Senior Airman Johnson, little tiny thing. And so she's looking up at you screaming, and you're still scared. She liked to pick on her, and she would scream right in her face until Bonnie started to cry. I would always be nearby, and although I didn't dare intervene, these were the games that the TIs had to play in basic military training. I was always there for her as soon as she was taking off the hot seat. It didn't seem like I got as much grief from our TI, but when I did, Bonnie did the same thing for me. And it was all pretty harmless. I wonder what the other girls thought of the TIs. They probably laughed behind their backs. You know, they're older, they've been around longer, or made fun of how ridiculous the younger airmen looked when we scuttled away like roaches to avoid their gaze. It's funny what time and experience does. I would like to think that if I were to join the military at this point in my life, I would follow their guidelines, but the fear wouldn't be there to make me do anything they said without question. This has got to be one of the reasons you can't join the military after you hit 42, even though I'm only 30. Not a lot scares you anymore. While we went through basic military training together, I never realized how close I was to Bonnie. In the photo album and every single photo, I was right next to her. We clung to each other through this life-changing experience, as I'm sure all the other trainees did. Well, I know I clung to her. When we were allowed to go to a military family's house to celebrate Thanksgiving, Bonnie and I went together. This was the first home-cooked meal we'd been given since we entered basic training, and the family was very nice. They let us call our parents and talk to them. This was the first time I cried when I talked to my mom. I stood in the military family member's bedroom on the phone, crying to my mom, just like I would have when I was little. Let's see. I'm looking for... Okay. There we go. There were a few girls now and then that didn't make it for medical reasons. We would always hear about them being sent off for more tests and they would never come back. This made me very worried when I started getting random nosebleeds. Pretty sure it was due to the temperature and humidity change from Michigan to Texas, but this didn't make it any less scary. The first time it happened, I was making my bed and I noticed blood falling onto the clean white sheets. This was horrifying enough as we had to keep our beds perfect, and now I had bloody sheets. I stood up and a spray of blood shot out of my nose, across the bay, onto the shiny gray finished floor. All the girls came running and told me I should go to CQ to get it checked out. I declined, and they brought in our brother flight's TI, who forced me to go down after I insisted that I was fine. I walked down the stairs, only half in my uniform, and into the CQ area to speak with the doctor. You always had to state, Airman Huffman reports as ordered. So I'm standing there. As soon as you arrived in front of any TI or high-ranking individual in charge. The military doctor quickly looked me over, and after I again stated I was fine, sent me back to my dorm to finish getting ready. The second time I recall this happening was while standing in military formation under the metal overhang outside that attached to our dormitory. As I stood rigidly at attention, the blood began to slowly trickle out of my nose. My TI, Senior Airman Johnson, stood right in front of me, looking into my eyes like a rabid bulldog, and she told me that I was not to move a muscle, and I didn't. Didn't move at all. She stated something along the lines of, if I even twitched, I would be in a world of hurt. The blood continued to run down my lip, and as nauseating as it all was, considering my huge fear of blood, I refused so much as blink. We didn't get timeout options at this point in the Air Force, if that was ever really a thing. Today I wonder what must have been going through her mind. Senior Airman Johnson, what were you thinking? This young girl standing in front of her was scared out of her mind, but was more scared of what would happen if she didn't listen. It must have been a sight. It's pretty amazing how she could keep her composure.